Engagement is about 2x of TikTok. If you look at history, great stories always travel across multiple formats, multiple languages, multiple geographies. So our thesis right from the time that we started was that we will enable people to share their stories across different formats and languages and geographies. What internet has done is that it has democratized supply side for across almost everything. So you should also learn from mistakes and success of others. So I read probably more than anybody that you would have ever met. The problem in India, CPMs are so low that you need to have very significant scale before ads can become powerful. My advice for almost any kind of business is to have a clear definition of how do you know this is working. Generally, the way to know that is either you have very high frequency or you have very high engagement. Similarly, one of our values is like be as transparent as possible. That people have access to my calendar. Intern at Pratilipi would have more independence than a VP at a series. Vast majority of our writers are first-time writers. Out of top 50 highest earning writers in any given month, usually about 48, 49 are women writers.
How do you set them up for success? Ranjeet, welcome to That One Idea, where, as I was telling you, in our 4th season and close to 50 episodes, and we couldn't be more excited to welcome you to what we're calling the best of content. And Pratilipi for us is right up there as a category creator in digital literature, if I may. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here.
Very excited to get into the backstory. We started That One Idea at WaterBridge because we are always early backers and first institutional VC, and typically we are backing a founder with a pitch deck and just an idea. You've really been a category creator in multiple ways. It's firstly digital literature. You've chosen linguistic diversity as a key. Hindi is not the main language on the app, close to 12 to 15 languages that you're currently covering. You've also managed to create this community of folks who are united by various genres of written work and copy. Pratilipi, in fact, is Sanskrit for copy, and they can actually interact live with the authors. And you've democratized not just access to high quality proprietary content, but also found unique ways to enable authors to monetize as well. So lots to unpack for us in these next 30, 40 minutes. But I'll take you all the way to the beginning. How did you assemble your founding team? And were all of you drawn to this idea, or was it a particular personal instance for you that drew you to this idea? But how did you all get started, and how did you assemble your founding team?
So founding team, essentially, I thought of people that I liked and respected and that I wanted to kind of work together with. In fact, within the co-founders, one was my school batchmate, one was my engineering college batchmate, one was my batchmate from MBA, one was colleague at Vodafone. First PM was my batchmate. First hire was my batchmate. First hire was actually my senior from Vodafone. Then first few other team members were people who were users of Pratilipi and were just trying in a paid position. So generally the thought process was that people that we already knew, liked and respected, that people that with whom we would like love to go on the journey. So that was the thought process. As far as idea is concerned, this was a personal problem that like I wanted somebody to solve this, where language or something else should not be a barrier to access of content. I thought was always has been that it should be like the world should move towards more and more and more freedom, where you get to choose what you want to do. You get to choose whether I want to read in Hindi or Malayalam or French or German. It should not be because access is not there. So that's not the kind of world I want to live in. I did not think that I would be a good fit for this kind of business, so I did not want to do this myself, but I wanted somebody to do this. And nobody really did. There was like a 5-6 years gap from when I discussed this idea versus when we actually started doing it. But then because nobody else was doing it and I was thinking of like what to do next, I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. Also, I'll just clarify. And this is something that I've been saying for the last 10 years now. Pratilipi is nothing to do with written word or text or books or literature or whatever. It's like you start somewhere. Pratilipi's thought process always has been on solving or rather leveraging stories across all formats, across all languages, and hopefully very soon.
You enable storytellers.
Exactly.
So I want to come to that. At the face of it, it seems like India is not a UGC market for storytellers, and some folks might challenge whether we have that kind of supply side, in your case, authors who can produce this kind of high quality talent. So how did you go about the classic cold start problem, right? So how did you go about convincing folks that yours is the right platform of choice in order to enable their stories to get distributed widely?
So first I want to clarify that it's not just about stories. In general, if you see, what internet has done is that it has democratized supply side for across almost everything. Like how many video creators were there before YouTube? The answer is maybe there are 1,000 movie producers and TV show producers, and that's it. Now it will be like 1 million video creators. How many people owned rented property before Airbnb came along? Maybe 100,000 rookies, and that's about it. How many professional car drivers were there before Uber came along? So like, it's not just about Pratilipi, it's in general when like people utilize internet to democratize, it almost always expands the market by like an order of magnitude or sometimes 3 orders of magnitude versus taking a share of the existing market. So vast majority of video creators on YouTube, for example, would be first-time video creators. The same is true for literature, or rather Pratilipi. The same is true across the world. How do we convince them? Answer is with a lot of difficulty. Because generally, like from a writer's perspective, unless I have readers, why should they come to place? That's a valid question. So what we did was that we said, okay, you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is say yes. If you say yes, we will make your profile, we'll upload your content, we'll give you all the analytics, we'll tell you what reviews are and all of that. So if other people read it, great. But even if they don't read it, there's nothing that you are missing. So the primary way of attracting early authors was that. And the second way was basically giving them such a fabulous experience that they tell their friends that, you know what, you should also publish on Pratilipi.
Do you have a lot of first-time authors, like people who had that innate talent?
These are people who are professional writers, because semi-professional writers, because otherwise, like, how do we know people good? So early on, most of the writers were semi-professional writers, but today, most writers would be first-time writers. Like 90% writers would be first-time writers.
And how do you set them up for success? Because I would say their core skill is writing and producing high-quality, engaging content. How do you take it from that idea and thought and a storyline in their head to this beautiful episodic content which can get distributed here?
So the most important 2 things that we can do is one, recommendation. Like, so my favorite example is Harry Potter. Some of my friends think that it's the greatest book ever written. Some of my friends think that it's absolute crap. Some of my friends think that it's great, but it's great for kids. It's not like a Lord of the Rings or other books which anybody can read. So the book is the same, the story is the same. It's just that you have to find out the people who really will like that story. So we have invested heavily into that recommendation and personalization. So that's one thing that we can do. Second thing is that we have built a lot of stuff where writers who want to become better, they can become better. So this includes things like, for example, we launched very early days something called Pratilipi Writers. People who have won the Sahitya Academy or Gyan, they teach others about how to become a better writer. Similarly, we built a lot of social features where readers can give comments and other writers can give comments on what they could have done better. So we have invested a lot into writers who want to become better, like they have resources to become better. So we have the Pratilipi Fellowship Program, for example, which is a structured program where usually about 1,500 authors from a language will join for every season. We have had 6 seasons till now.
1,500 for each language.
For each language. And they will be taught on like how to monetize better on Pratilipi, how to engage with the readers better, what kind of genres work better, what else can they do to become better. So we do a lot of stuff into that author education wherever people are interested.
And in terms of content format, because you do multi-format as well, right? As you said, it's not just about writing a book or a story or a comic. This could be an audiobook, this could be a short format YouTube series, full-blown cable TV series. Is there an argument that different storylines bode well to different formats, written versus visual versus audio? And do you help unravel that as well for your writers?
So in general, if you look at history, great stories always travel across multiple formats, multiple languages, multiple geographies. Think of Iron Man, which is my favorite example. It started as a comic book in US in English for children. Is that really just a comic book anymore? Is that really just in US anymore? Is that really just in English anymore? Is that really just for kids anymore? Now, of course, there are nuances. There could be certain stories that may work really well in one format and may not work really well in one format. But in general, great stories almost always adapt themselves to a wide variety of different formats, to a wide variety of different geographies, to a wide variety of different geographies. So our thesis right from the time that we started was that we will enable people to share their stories across different formats and languages and geographies. We'll find out which of these stories have the highest potential to be the next Game of Thrones, the next Lord of the Rings. And we will basically then leverage them into as many other formats, as many other languages, as many other geographies as possible. So like it's still early days, but we are doing that by.
But you also really innovated on actually picking up these reader side engagement metrics, whether you chose to do episodic reading, you have live series as a concept. You made it completely democratic in the sense that your readers could access the authors of these stories. So did all of firstly, those innovations are hard being a first in the space. and how did you use those signals to decipher which ones to scale?
I generally pretty strongly believe in that you don't have to learn from your own mistakes only. Of course, you should learn from your own mistakes, but you should also learn from mistakes and success of others.
Yeah.
So I read probably more than anybody that you would have ever met, which means that I have looked at the history of other companies, how they have scaled, which may not be exactly same as. So a lot of inspiration behind Pratilipi, for example, comes from WaterBridge, which is kind of similar to us. A lot of like a lot of things come from what Naver Webtoon did, which is for comics, but it has still scaled massively. A lot of things came from the mistakes that Chinese literature companies did, including Chinese literature. So essentially, we had a hypothesis which came from not just our own experience, but from the experience of others as well. And then we tried to experiment with them and see which one worked, which one did not work.
And when you started building these communities between authors and readers, what were some of the things that surprised you with just the community-led engagement?
Honestly, because we had looked at so many case studies, I don't think there was too much surprising. The one thing, for example, which was a little bit surprising, but still we knew that to some extent at least, was that the power of recommendation even on comments. So, for example, if you just put comments from a, let's say, which one is the latest comes on top, or like you don't care too much about, or rather, let's say, if you put a comment that gets the most engagement on the top, then sometimes there will be a lot of trolling, there will be a lot of negative sentiments. Versus, for example, our reviews, at least one factor that goes into ranking them is how kind they are. So typically, because kinder reviews tend to be more likely on the top, which means that you'll generally see people be more kinder or more nice in general. So it improves the overall review. So these are the kind of things that we have learned from others, we have experimented and then done.
Anything on genres in terms of how you decided to expand and like that?
This is one of the things that we learned from China, where there are different apps, a lot of times from different companies, sometimes from same company also, for different genres and different user groups. Like for teenagers, there's this app, for romance, there's this app, for horror, there's this app, for suspense, there's this app. What that tends to do is that we don't have large network effects, because network effects only apply to people who are on that network. So essentially, every app has its own mechanisms. We did not want that to happen in India. So we wanted to make sure that even if it means that we take a hit with our growth rate, we will still make sure that we have a very horizontal approach where there is no one genre that dominates. So like very early on, our approach has always been that we'll take a very broad-based approach, even if it comes to trade-offs.
That's very interesting, because a lot of your peers within content in the video space have gone down the house of apps route, where they have like different app formats.
But so do we, but not for genres. So we care about user experience more than anything. So thought process, like if there is a different app that can give you a significantly better user experience, for example, audio versus text is a significantly different user experience. We have Pratilipi FM as a separate app. But it's not basis of like, it's not based on genre.
It's content format. Is it audio? Is it video?
More than that, it's about user experience. Is the user experience similar enough, or is the user experience too different?
Do you see a lot of people traverse even multi-language? A lot of multi-language users are typically customers are loyal to one language.
But a lot of people, are like rather 8-10% people do consume content in a different language as well. But that's only if somebody else shares them. So a lot of people, for example, primarily read Malayalam. But if somebody shares a good story in Hindi or English, they might still read.
Got it. And with content, monetization is always a question, and the trade-offs between growth and when you start, like when you push the button and lever on monetizing. Again, you've had to build a lot of first principles-based playbooks if you're
not really. This is one of the things that I disagree with the at least Indian experts the most. Monetization was and is the easiest piece of the puzzle of building any consumer internet business. And
are you somebody who's in favor of ads? Would love to even
in India, not really. There could be specific niche use cases where it could work. The problem in India, CPMs are so low that you need to have very significant scale before ads can become powerful. There is nothing wrong with ads as a business model. It's just that
it can't be the primary revenue driver.
It could be, but the problem is that the capital markets of India are not that deep where they can support you till you get to that large enough user base where ads can be like the right one. There are use cases that could work, but it's just hard. Like, at the very least, you need to get to at least 20-30 million DAU before it would be meaningful. That would mean like burning at least $500 million if not. And sure, people have raised $500 million. It's just that it's relatively hard. So it's relatively easier to monetize in other ways. But in general, what we have seen, again, everywhere in the world, it's not that India is an exception. In fact, let me walk you through the story. So when we started in 2014, for example, people said nobody anywhere in the world pays for digital content. Then people started paying for Spotify and Netflix. People said, no, nowhere in the world except for US people pay for digital content. Then Tencent and Alibaba both launched their own payment products, and people started paying for content in China. So no, nowhere, anywhere, in the world, except for China and US, people pay for digital content. Then the same thing happened in Southeast Asia with the rise of live streaming and all of that. Then people make that exclusive. Then people started paying for Game of Thrones and IPL to Hotstar. Then people said, maybe OTT is different.
Yeah.
All of those are very lazy approximations. In general, if something has been true for 100 years, it's likely going to be true in the years out. If something has been true for 100 different markets, it's likely going to be true in the 101st market as well. So in general, I think monetization is the easiest piece to represent.
And within monetization, formats also matter. Like we spoke about ads, the subscriptions.
So that nuances exist basis other things. Like for example, do you have enough engagement where you can launch subscriptions?
Yeah.
If you don't have enough engagement, subscription is not a good model. If you have enough frequency but not enough long-term retention, micropayments is a better model because you want to earn as much money as quickly as possible. For example, casual gaming or a pocket FM, for example. So it depends on the details of the business. But monetization itself is not that. Assuming that you have a high enough engagement retention and frequency.
Yeah. And how do you see these monetization formats, whether it's IAPs or we spoke subscriptions or even ads for that matter, evolving in the long run? Do you always think it'll be a healthy and hearty mix?
So neither do I know nor do I care. I focus both as a founder and as an investor in value creation. And as I said, like value capture is almost terribly easy if you create enough value. So my experience, both within the Pratilipi's ecosystem, like literature, FM, comics, IBM, Westland, as well as all the founders that I advise, is that value capture is almost laughably easy if you're creating enough value.
That's very, very well said. And back to these formats that we spoke about in terms of audio, video, and written content. Any, I would say, surprises? I know that we spoke about PMF and it being elusive and it can't be a moving target and a vision of whatever the founder wants it to be. But what would your advice be for somebody starting out day zero today and wanting to build something in content?
My advice for almost any kind of business is to have a clear definition of how do you know this is working. For certain kind of most consumer internet products, not media products like consumer internet, UGC platforms and all. Generally, the way to know that is either you have very high frequency or you have very high engagement. If you have one of the two, you can figure things out. If you don't have one of the two, generally chances are that you need to keep on iterating till you have one of them, which is good enough. There are other kinds of businesses where it's more about like CAC LTV, how quickly can you recover your costs. So, for example, if you're building a media play or a PGC play like a TBF, you want to figure out, okay, if I'm spending X money, can I get Y money, which is higher than X back as quickly as possible. So different businesses, there will be different ways to design it. But the key is how do you actually know the business makes sense.
Interesting. Does the Pareto apply in your business? I know we have something in public that says that it actually doesn't apply and you have a lot of genres and a lot of stories. Why do you think that's
for UGC platforms, Pareto doesn't apply, power law applies. UGC platforms are more like VC investments. The top 1% would typically drive like 80-90% of readership. The thing is that Pratilipi would have, for example, roughly about 15.5 million stories. So top 1% means 15,000 stories, not 200 stories. So power law applies, but power law applies on a percentage basis. Same would be true for Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or any other UGC platform.
Have you ever, in the e-commerce world, we talk about endless aisles, for example. In your case, we just like scrolling till like get scroll fatigue, seeing the amount of content, right? How challenging is it at current scale today with the kind of like stories you're publishing on how do you make sure that every story at launch is getting the right visibility? And is there like a playbook you have from like day zero of launch until it gets to a certain number of views?
So it's complicated, but the primary purpose is to find out what story is the best for a reader, not necessarily for a writer. So there will be a lot of stories on Pratilipi that would have 0 views because we simply don't know enough about the story. We would have mined the content, but the vast majority of valuable information comes from when readers interact with the content. So till a story has been read 50 times, for example, or till a reader has read at least 5, 7, 10 titles, there's a lot of guesswork that goes on. Once a person has read 10 stories, then we have a lot of data points on their consumption. So like 70-80% of the times, what you will read will be recommended by my recommendation system. And for mature readers, like people who have been on the platform for let's say 10 days, 95% of your next reads are going to be based on our recommendation system because we understand what you like so much better.
Is search not intuitive
for users?
It's mostly recommendation. Okay, so your recommendations are that good in a sense that it's not.
Our engagement is about 2x of TikTok.
Wow. All right. So you said new users are search lit, but existing users, once they are past the 10-story mark, it's heavily recommendation driven. Understood. That's a very, very insightful thing. And you also speak about this this anticipation of regular interaction, right? And that whole part of building that bridge between the content author, like the IP owner, and your readers, right? Typically, again, I'm not sure if it's the first to do around in content around the world who's done this, but why did you choose that route? I don't know if there's a backstory to how you came up with these live series and these releases.
A lot of this is learning from other markets. So, for example, we learned from talking to a bunch of different Chinese companies that, let's say, you know Pratilipi itself. Most people don't come to Pratilipi because they care about Pratilipi. Most people come to Pratilipi because they have their 5, 10, 15 favorite authors.
That they like. Yeah.
So as often as these authors publish, that often readers will come.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, unless your favorite 10 writers are publishing on a daily basis, you are not going to platform on a daily basis. But from a platform's perspective, like that number becomes more like, let's say, 5,000 authors, because your favorite 10 might be different from your favorite 10 might be different from my favorite 10. So we have put a lot of emphasis on like these top writers publishing as frequently as possible, so that their readers come to platform as frequently as possible. And then lesson, as I said, is primarily from other Chinese companies.
That's very, and this works across formats, across genres that people want to. I also want to cover this part on basically bite-sized consumption, right? Another myth that I was going to say, like, is this myth on India being like a deficit for attention economy and a time pass economy, and that people don't have the patience to go through anything which is long form as
That's
well.
just a lazy generalization. So funny thing is that the company that propagated this the most, ByteDance, for example, ByteDance, if you look at TikTok in like UN, which is the original version of TikTok, every single quarter they keep on pushing the like length of video on the platform. So in fact, they started from 15 seconds, now they have up to 90 minutes. So TikTok itself doesn't think that that's right. It's just that as a new company, you need to say something that helps you stand out. And one of the things people said was that short form, people's attention spans are going down and people want to consume short form content, all of that. And it sounded something which was new. So a lot of VCs and journalists started believing in that, which means that a lot of money went into the sector, which means that product actually got better, which means that actually there is actual customer adoption. But early on, if you look at almost everybody who spoke about this, if you look at their actions, not what they did, not what they said, but what they did, you will see that that was never true. For example, let's say Facebook. Facebook said that video is the next big thing and all of that because they wanted to have brand dollars instead of performance dollars. Performance marketing, Facebook gets to charge like in India 30 rupees per CPM. For brand dollars, you could easily charge like 200 rupees. It is in their best interest that they promote video because then you are competing with TV versus competing with Google. But when you look at all the cases that Facebook fought and lost, it turns out that they inflated their video matrices by like thousands of percentage just to show that video was working. It's just that over a period of time, people invested so much into video that infrastructure actually got better. So today, do people prefer video? Yes, they do, because video quality is so much better. But that was not really the case. That was just people being dumb or people being like lazy, people not looking into what people are actually doing and just looking at what people are saying.
And Pratilipi today obviously has seen lots of enviable successes, and you've moved from just being a literature publishing platform to now even doing mainstream OTT shows. Take us through some of the earliest successes. What makes you the proudest, and any new releases that you can share or disclose today? So
Pratilipi's thesis has always been that it's not about literature, it's about stories, and great stories should travel across formats, languages, and geographies. So obviously you have to start somewhere. So we started in literature. Today we have 6 business units. We have literature, we have Pratilipi Comics, we have Pratilipi FM. We acquired 2 companies. One is called IBM Podcast and one is called Westland Books. And then we have 6 business divisions, which is IP licensing. Which basically, so there are always going to be formats or geographies where we don't want to go directly, either because we lack talent or because we lack capital. So in those cases, we partner with third-party ecosystem players to provide our stories that they can then convert into, well, anything. Could be TV shows, could be OTT shows, could be movies, stuff like that. So almost all of these TV shows or OTT shows that have been launched have been shows that have already worked on Pratilipi across different formats and usually across different languages. So for example, you're talking about Nutongi Train, started as a literature story, then it became #1 comics on Pratilipi Comics. Then it was so successful that the writer wrote a second book, then she wrote a third book. Then we translated into 5 different languages, then we converted into an animation series which has like, I think 40 million views on YouTube. First episode has, I think, 10 million views or so. Then a major producer is now building a web series on top of that. So that's just one example. So most example that you look at would be very, very simple. And would love to get some heartwarming like writer stories as well, right? And how
their own like trajectories have changed post Pratilipi?
So vast majority of our writers are first-time writers.
Yeah.
Out of top 50 highest earning writers in any given month, usually about 48, 49 are women writers. So like a lot of people, first of all, were people who were homemakers who did not have any sense of identity. They definitely did not have any of their own earning. Who are now making like 2 lakh a month just from writing on Pratilipi. So like we get so many emails and messages like this: I got a flat from my money, or my daughter were ill and like, there was a very expensive procedure that needed to be done, and my husband did not have as much money, so I basically chipped in and we got this done. Or that I was able to finance the education of my children. So we get like almost on a weekly basis, we'll get at least a few stories like this.
That's fantastic. Would also like to just shift gears a little and talk about team building, because this is, as you said, that you have such a clear vision of where, not just where you started, but how you wanted to navigate this journey as well. How do you get folks that come in, especially early employees, when you don't have the luxury of capital or even the brand, to buy into founder vision?
I don't necessarily think that they have to buy into the vision per se. Like not all founders believe in the vision, for that matter. The belief was in each other. So we have very clear set of values that Pratilipi wants to imbibe. For example, one of those is like, in fact, the first one is, and I always say that if you don't remember all the others, just remember this one, which is always try and do the right thing. So even if it is something that is bad for me, even if it is something that ends up shutting down the company entirely, we'll still not do something that is not good, not just for me, but for the broader ecosystem. That includes my colleagues, that includes my readers and writers, that includes my investors, that includes like my broader, let's say, the society at large. So we take a lot of care about that. Similarly, one of our values is like be as transparent as possible. So that people have access to my calendar, for example. We went through a difficult financial time for the last 2 years. People knew exactly how much money company has in their balance sheet. So we generally take a lot of pride in that. And then the thought process is like people self-select if they believe in those values. So it's not necessarily about that you have to believe in what Pratilipi is trying to do. It's more like you have to believe in the way we are trying to get there. So if you believe in that, then you just have fun on the journey. It doesn't really matter if I'm working at a company which is building Pratilipi or Uber or Ola. It's more about like what kind of people I want to work with, what kind of a work environment I want to be in. So
and that value match that you're talking about, would that traverse to also backgrounds? And typically, as you build this out, is your policy like to get, say, folks from incumbents in publishing, for example?
I don't think we would have some people from publishing, sure, but
it's a classic hire for attitude or aptitude.
So we obviously care about skills as well, but we predominantly care about whether you would be a good fit.
Interesting. And how have you scaled teams as the company itself is scaled?
Very slowly and very thoughtfully. Pratilipi also takes a lot of pride in being one of the most independent companies. In fact, I often say that let's say intern at Pratilipi would have more independence than a VP at a Series A. In fact, I have publicly said a lot of times, for example, my board gets to hire and fire me, my board gets to advise me, my board doesn't get to decide on the strategy. Same for an intern. I get to hire and fire him, I get to give him advice, but the final decision making on whatever he is doing or she is doing is
their own.
So that is the level of independence that we want to kind of try and operate with. So with that, hiring becomes both easier and harder. So if we have the right leaders, then essentially it's up to them to hire the next leader. So it becomes easier from that perspective. Yes.
A lot of startups just end up hiring a lot of employees, and would love to just know from seed to Series D, like what's been the headcount?
There is no right answer. There are kind of companies where you need a lot of people. Like if you're building a ops company, for example, a lot of times you need a lot of people. If you're building a pure tech company like a literature, you don't need a lot of people. So there's no right answer. From Pratilipi's perspective, I think rough idea, seed we would have been maybe about 8-10 people. Series A would have been about 30 people. Series B would have been again 30, maybe 35. Series C would have been maybe closer to 40, 45. Series D would have been about 150 odd.
It's definitely significantly lesser than I would say folks in the category.
But like it's a consumer tech company. So the reason why it is even 180 is mainly because Westland and IBM are media organizations. Westland
the acquired assets.
So the kind of company at Westland is you need 50. The kind of company literature is once you get to critical mass, you can run it like 3 people.
Very, very interesting. And you also spoke about the Pratilipi mafia, if I may, and how you've managed to successfully spin out a lot of founders and early stage startups. Would love to have some of those stories. And did you have early ins into, what set them aside to start their own entrepreneurial and founder journeys?
So in general, because we are looking for people who are highly independent, right? We are looking for people, and we are ourselves very transparent. So you learn across the world versus learning just about what you are doing. So it's almost like self-selecting for people who typically want to be founders. So it's less of what we did, it's more of the culture that we have and the values that we have. It almost self-selects for people who have that entrepreneurial zeal. In general, the way Pratilipi operates is that we encourage people to try out random stuff. Like if you have an idea, we actually encourage you to try it out and let's see what happens, even if it has nothing to do with Pratilipi. And just keep on tinkering with this. That helps you learn, that helps you stay fresh. And if something seems to be valuable, then we generally actually actively encourage people to leave and do that. In fact, for a lot of companies, or Pratilipi alumni companies, we or Pratilipi people have been the first set of angel investors in like maybe 80% of the cases. So like that also encourages other people to do that. So for example, let's say one of the earliest companies that came out of Pratilipi was Kutum and Animal. In both cases, in Kutum's case, all four out of four co-founders are ex-Pratilipi. In Animal's case, out of the original 5 founders, 4 were ex-Pratilipi. So in general, that would be the case.
So you have a EIR program going on.
Not really. We encourage everyone to try out things. It's not that like only product managers do this or only EIRs do this. Like the culture is such that we encourage people to experiment. Like even if you're in design, for example, you want to learn marketing, we actually encourage you to have a 10 lakh budget and try out marketing. If you want to learn how engineering works, but you are a product manager, we actually encourage you to try and learn your hands at programming. So like the culture is that you should try and learn as many things as possible.
That's fantastic. And from building orgs and teams to building cap tables, right? Of course, it's not been an easy time for consumer tech the last couple of years, but how has your own view of selecting the right investors changed through these rounds as the company scaled and like attracted capital? I also want to later on talk about investor founder value add and I would say best practices or advice you have for first investors like us. But we'd love to start with cap table building and again, advice to founders setting out to raise their first check. Anything that they can learn from your journey.
So starting from our own story, so in general, people don't kind of like to back what they don't understand, and India hasn't really seen UGC companies. So UGC companies are very counterintuitive to most of the kind of companies. One, for example, in general, they should not monetize for as long as possible. The earlier you monetize, the worse it is. In general, there are exceptions, of course. Like everything is nuanced in life. Number 2, you typically need to get to a critical mass before you can put any number to how valuable something is. Like you could argue the exact same company is worth $1 million. You can argue the exact same company is worth $1 billion. In fact, a company that I met, the CEO that I met very recently was that their company today is valued at upwards of $5 billion. More details will kind of help narrow down, so I don't want to do that. Versus the exact same company, I can totally imagine being worth $10 million. So that's true for UGC platforms or a certain kind of companies, which meant that earlier at least we took money from whoever gave us money. And very few people did, like we got news from almost everyone. But it was easier to raise money from people who had seen like this kind of UGC platform model work out. So that is why our Series B, Series C was led by Ximing, Xinwei, and Tencent because they had already seen that happen. Tencent obviously is trying to do something similar in China. Similarly, Series D was easier because Krafton has seen that with Naver and Kakao, that how does UGC actually kind of work? How does the IP ecosystem play works out? So a lot of that kind of just came along because people who have seen that. I think that's that.
I would love to get down to the founder value add piece from
before
investors.
That, you would also say like how should others think about capital?
Yes.
In general, my advice is to typically get, at least for the first round, get as many operators as possible. Not as many, like get a few operators that you like and respect, and who in turn like and respect you. It's less about value add. It's more about like essentially a lot of times problems that you will go through today are problems that they went through 2 years back. So you can just pick up a phone and talk to them about it. On the other side, because these operators are generally busy people themselves, so they are not going to be bothering you. So it's like the best of both worlds. So unlike typical institutional VCs will require you to manage them and where you have to invest time and energy, with most founder or operator investors, they are never going to ask you for an MIS or anything else. So like, you don't have negative value add, but you do have positive value add that you can call them and ask them for advice for whatever they have gone through. So first round, they should be doing that in general. Beyond that, in general, go for like whichever fund or partner, rather less fund, more partner, you like the most and you respect the most and who has the best recommendation from other people. Almost everything else, valuation, terms and all of that comes much later. So generally, my advice to people is typically that.
Would love to cover the value add piece, right? Over all these years of building Pratilipi, what have you looked forward to most in your investor meetings, and what would be, I would say, some of the best practices in terms of managing a board and a cap table?
That's a difficult question. I think this is one area where I'm terrible at managing investors or board.
Yeah.
I can tell you what my beliefs are. My beliefs are that a great VC should basically be like just like a great angel, which means that like you don't, or you, rather you do the least amount of negative value add. Ask me for the least amount of stuff that is not relevant. And similarly, just like the best operators or best advisors, if I need help on something, then you are actually available. So like if I need to improve someone, for example, VC is a much better place to do that than most people are. Or for example, I want to understand how different market works, like how Korea works. If you have some Korean LPs, of course, you have much better access to that. So I think, at least in my belief, the best thing that VC should do is part of this, like just be least negative value add and essentially be available when I need advice. And the second thing would be like question me and discuss and debate on things which are strategically important, but also don't waste time on things which are like, I think, so one of my advisors and investors basically says this a lot of times that especially in India, but also globally true, that vast majority of investors, both public and private markets, they worry too much about details. They don't worry about things which are actually important. So they miss the forest for the trees. So focusing on things which are actually valuable versus focusing on trivial things just because like that's easy because it's in the MIS or something that you understand would probably be the second part. And a lot of times founders also make the same mistake. Like they start worrying about like very, very small things which are entirely irrelevant in the large scheme of things, while there is a burning fire that they are not kind of addressing at all.
Any best practices for us as first check VCs, as a first institutional VC looking to back, I would say, idea stage companies? What would be now on the other side of this journey, what would be some of the best practices or any advice for us to be our best?
And to my VC friends, my advice usually is that a lot of people look at lagging matrices and lagging things like because let's say short video is hot, so I'm backing a short video company, or because profitability today is hot, so I'm looking at profitability, or because scale was hot 2 years back, it will be in again 2 years, so I'm backing that. Look at leading indicators. Like so, typically, for example, for monetization, engagement will follow monetization will follow engagement every single time. So instead of looking for who has higher monetization, look for who has higher engagement. Or if for example, you want something which is going to have very high resubscription rates or very high retention rates, retention will come up after 6 months. Look at what my frequency is. If my frequency is high, retention will follow almost automatically. So in general, look at leading indicators versus looking at lagging indicators is typically the advice that I give to VCs most often.
I noticed you said you have VC friends. That's good to know and to begin with.
It's a small ecosystem, right?
It's a small ecosystem, yes. I know it's a common question, but any advice to, I would say, Ranjeet, who's starting out at Pratilipi today?
Only focus on value add, like only focus on what makes value add to customers. Only focus on basically what is good for my readers and my writers. Do not care about what anybody else says, especially what your investors or what your cap table or what your board members say. Like, absolutely write it off. Like, don't even think about it. Only care about what is good for your readers, what is good for your writers. Everything is speaks for itself.
That is good. And Anjali, I can't let you go without getting book recommendations from you.
I'm pretty sure I'm the worst person for that because I read all across the board.
Yeah, so I have like 5 rapid fire questions purely on book recommendations.
I am not the best person to answer that, but sure.
I mean, I'm sure you've read some of these, but I wanted to ask you your favorite like autobiography or biography, like a real story that you've resonated to the best.
I don't know, like any day you ask me, the answer will be different. Right now, maybe autobiography of a yogi, but the answer will be different every time.
Fantastic. And wanted to know what are you currently reading?
Comic book.
Is it one of yours?
Or I am with it. No, it's only one with it.
Got it. Do you believe that movies are better than books? And are you a purist when it comes to books? Actually, you said that you believe that the best content travels is
I prefer reading more.
Yeah.
But that is just because I read very quickly. So it's like it engages my imagination better. Like I'm a purist in any way or form.
Yeah. I was going to ask you your favorite film which is based on a book.
Probably Godfather, most likely. In fact, my favorite book, most days I'll answer as The Sicilian, which is a successor to Godfather.
Do you have a favorite genre?
Typically fantasy,
Yeah.
but I read all over the book.
And I have to ask your favorite author.
Again, answer would depend, but most days I'll probably answer Mario Puzo, Nirala in India, Mario Puzo in English.
And anyone I mean, I'm sure you will reveal this, but anyone from Pratilipi's, pool that you're most excited in terms of, early success and highest potential?
As a writer,
who's going to be like the next breakout?
Honestly, we have been on such a survival journey for last 2 years or so that I haven't been reading as much on Pratilipi at least. So can't be an answer right now at least.
All right.
I think it's not early, but I think Varsha Srivastava, the lady who wrote Murdo Train, will be super successful. But that's probably already a little late because she's already somewhat successful.
Anyone else in the pipeline?
A lot of them. It's just that because I'm not reading news stories, so I might not know as much.
Fair enough. You spoke about children's books, so I really want to cover that. I can tell you as a parent that it's very hard to find high quality, content. But take us through the book series that you're launching soon.
We have already launched. So this is something. So children's literature in particular is something I'm very, very excited about as a user, as a normal human being, not as a founder of anything. It's just that I think it comes with such high moral responsibility that it cannot be solved with just tech. So Pratilipi, as well as me personally, I'm a tech person. Like I'm an analytical person. Pratilipi is a tech company. Like I don't think that just tech alone is enough to solve for that moral responsibility. So I really wanted to do something, but I also could not do something because the moral responsibility is so high. But when we took over Westland, it became a little bit easier because Westland is a traditional publisher. They publish editorially driven books. So we started this initiative about 6-7 months back. Now we're getting to a point where we'll be publishing 3 comic books every month, physical comic books. In fact, the last comic book that we published was a comic illustrated version of a book from Ruskin Bond. I've been such a fan of Ruskin Bond for such a long time that giving the new generation a chance to read through that is so amazing. So really, really excited just about that illustrated comic book series. We have done a bunch now. By now, we have done Panchtatra, we have done Life of Vivekanand, we have done Ruskin Bond, and a few others. It's something that I'm very, very excited about as a user. And as a person.
So again, I'm not like a tangentially different question, but on fiction versus non-fiction, one could argue that there are a lot of real life stories, but the person doesn't have the talent or the skill set required to narrate those stories in a way that's appealing to a wider audience. So have you ever thought of coming into the non-fiction category and taking real life stories?
Pratilipi is a tech company. We don't do any of that. We own Westland and IBM who do this. IBM does this. Westland does this. Pratilipi is a tech company. We don't create story. We don't write anything. We do not create a story. It's like up to the people to decide what they want to publish. Entirely up to the rest of the people.
So I'm guessing you feel that there's enough supply then to not have to enable this with folks who have good stories.
If you take a survey of people, at least 50% people will say that they could write a book if they had enough time and discipline. I'm pretty sure supply is not an issue.
So no, the ghostwriters also are not an issue really there in terms of helping me finding the support, somebody to support me write something.
That would be a problem. It's just not a problem that we want to solve.
Interesting. That's a good insight.
Like again, just to be clear, Westland solves it. It's just that Pratilipi doesn't solve it.
Yeah. In terms of visual storytelling, especially with the kids genre, how much of you think storytelling will move to pure visual formats?
Do not know. Our thought process is that what we want to do is democratize storytelling. We want people to have like 30 options. You pick what works for you. You prefer reading a comic, you read a comic book. Somebody else prefers audio, they can listen to an audio. Somebody else wants to read, they can read. Somebody else wants to watch a TV show, you can do that. Somebody wants to do all 4.
So I could technically, nothing stops me from publishing a pure book full of illustrations.
Of course.
That's
in fact, you could go. Pratilipi Comics is made just for that. You could publish on literature as well, but a much better approach would be just go and publish on Pratilipi Comics.
Very, very interesting. And I want to ask you a very forward-looking question now since we've only covered the backstory. What are you excited about the most beyond just this year and beyond?
Within Pratilipi. So 2 things. One is that we have now proven that literature works. We have now proven that it works across different languages. And we have early proof points on it works across formats. So one is that we want to prove both to ourselves and to the broader world that it's true across other formats. Especially, I'm very, very excited about animation and interactive content. I don't know what interactive content would exactly look like, but basically where you are a part of the story, you're not just consuming the story. It could be a game, it could be something else, I don't even know. So that's one thing that we are very excited about. Second part is something that we haven't yet proven at all, which is the geography. We have just started expanding outside India, so I'm very excited to see how our stories travel to US, to Japan, to Korea, to France, to other places, and vice versa. How do Japanese story come to India or to other places? So very excited about that.
That is awesome. And on that note, I want to say a huge thank you once again. I know you're a super fast talker, so I was like trying to keep up with you, but thank you so much, especially as the book recommendations. We have got it all on record, so we'll put this out when we release this. But Ranjeet, thank you once again for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Of course, thanks a lot for having me here.
No worries. Thank you.